Oh, bollocks to this. Alright, so we're basically living through the backstory of every post-apocalyptic video game ever made. Doesn't mean it has to be the only thing on our minds all the time. In the absence of the ability to just skip to the bit where we're fighting off mutated bandits with rocks and bits of old tin, let's face the apocalypse with good old-fashioned British denial. Let's eat crisps. Actually, most brands of actual crisp were covered the first time I covered them, way back in episode 3. Crisps are much of a muchness, really. Taken out of the gaudy packet, it's doubtful anyone could tell if they were munching on Walker's, Golden Wonder or KP. Basic crisps, that is. Fried slices of potato. By the 70s, corn pulp and moulding technology meant we could have crisp-like snacks covered in salt and MSG, shaped like anything from a bat to an abstract monster-related shape to a man with a parachute.
Look out for the KP skydivers. They're new from KP. Spot on for flavour. At a down-to-earth price.
And it's that sort of thing that we're mostly going to look at today, I'm not going to lie to you. But there was also the odd snack explicitly based on crisps and intended as variations or even refinements on the basic crisp model. The most famous of these is the American celebration of uniformity known as the Pringle.
Hey, Mom, you forgot the potato chips. They're right here. Is that?
I don't believe it.
Let's see.
Pringles newfangled potato chips.
Every single Pringles potato chip is a perfect potato chip.
They're not broken, taste a lot fresher too. The canister keeps them that way for you.
Pringles newfangled potato chips. As many chips as in a big bag. Fresh, unbroken, stacked in a crush-proof, stale-proof canister. Made a new way. Delicious, fresh, always crisp and crunchy.
Every single Pringles potato chip is the perfect potato chip.
They're not broken, taste a lot fresher too. The canister keeps them that way for you. Pringles newfangled potato chips.
But we didn't get those in the United Kingdom until the early 90s, well after the mass hysteria that produced the likes of Smith's Zodiacs had died down. Ooh, mystery flavour. Viewers with long legs and short hair might remember the abortive attempt at introducing them in the early 80s, by Cadbury's of all people, under the name Stackers.
Don't hold back. Grab a pack. Attack a stacker.
But it didn't catch on. The closest thing to a Pringle in this country prior to 1991 or so came from KP and was called a disco. The big gimmick to these was that they were round, and that's it. Perfect circles, in fact, or so the claim went. It's tempting to wonder what came first, the name or the concept, because they were launched in the late 70s when disco music was at its height, and a snack food named after it was a pretty obvious thing to do. Then again, if the snacks had been invented to fit the name, you'd think they'd go down the same route everyone else was and make them bright orange corn pulp atrocities shaped like platform boots or mirror balls or something. There was the sense they were going for a slightly classier demographic with these. Initial campaigns for the brand understandably leaned in hard on the cultural associations of the name, but admittedly the addition of a natural history professor comes somewhat out of left field.
Yeah, what's this? KP Discos, the new kind of crisps. What can be new about crisps?
We're discos, we're KP discos. We're different, we're rounder, will you take a look? We're discos, we're KP discos. And we taste as different as we look.
Oh, I see, singing crisps. Yes, that is new.
KP discos, we taste as different as we look.
He's probably connected to the fact that the advertisers clearly had no idea what disco music actually is. He represents their avatar, baffled by these kids and their beat musics, but ultimately good-natured and reasonably open-minded. Meanwhile, Nile Rodgers slowly and sadly shakes his head. Later adverts were a little more clued in, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
Another squash, Pauline?
Just the discos, thanks.
Discos? Oh, they're round. How novel. Not crisps, though, eh?
They're a different kind of crisp, Vivian.
Oh, yes. Not usual crisps, then. I'm not at all sure about these. Bit modern, eh? I mean, you'll be burning your bra next.
What bra?
And you thought disco stew was an exaggeration. This was your choice in those days, ladies. Gil from Frasier or this pillock. It's almost a mental exercise to remind yourself that not only is this guy meant to be the super cool aspiration figure, but viewers at the time wouldn't even need to be told that. It would, presumably, be obvious to them. Mind you, this was around 1979-1980, when disco was very much on its way out. But fortunately, the word outlived the musical genre, as short for discotheque, as in a place where kids went to move about to music under coloured lights, and the advertising duly shifted across to that meaning. Made by Peter Lord at Aardman Animations, fact fans, as was this follow-up a year or two later. Look, I know he's made of their handbags and all, and I know that the handbags are white so as to make the resulting creature look like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, but tell me it doesn't look like all their tampons just came to life and leapt into human shape to cheer them up. With the strings and all. Tampon man, am I alone here? Anyone? Oh well. Incidentally, discos really do taste as different as they look. Look even. Or at least they taste a bit different, in a way connected with how they look. Specifically, you can't slice such perfect discs from a potato, or at least not as easily as you can by simply pouring potato starch into a circular mould, which inevitably does make them taste different, more artificial, because that's exactly what they are, to the extent that they aren't legally allowed to identify as crisps anymore. A bit like the Ersatz square crisps, which I brought up in the previous episode, where we saw Lenny Henry engaging in light surrealism on a mountainside for no reason at all.
It's weird. It's weird.
Smith's Square Crisps. Eating is believing.
So Lenworth was the Square Crisps frontman for several years, initially with his "it's weird" shtick to underline the oddity of crisps that are square. These adverts were full of optical illusions and camera tricks, and of course Lenny's ability to do that thing with his eyes, which made it perfect to illustrate tasty flavour sensations.
See this little Smith Square Crisp? All golden, neat, and light. It looks quite innocent, you might suppose. But just you take a bite. The flavor hits you in the mouth, puts tingles up your nose. The crunch sends shivers down your spine and ends up in your toes. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird.
Smith's Square Crisps. Eating is believing.
After a while, this mutated into the more of a crunch than a crisp idea and slogan. Possibly by 1985 or so, the idea of a square crisp wasn't as weird anymore, if it ever had been, necessitating the adverts actually making use of the product's qualities other than its shape. And being made with corn as well as potato starch, they are indeed quite crunchy. Not that they gave up on the weirdness, they just channeled it slightly differently.
I'm just taking my dog for a walk. Tiddles, heel. He follows me everywhere, especially when I got a bag of Smith Square crisps. Well, they're not really crisps. They're more of a crunch than a crisp. Do you want one, Tiddles? Actually, Tiddles isn't really a dog. Are you, Tiddles?
Smith Square Crisps. The crisp that isn't a crisp.
Eventually, Saleni moved on, and without his cool factor, the weird aesthetic just felt vaguely twee and mannered.
What shall I do with our Herbert? He never gets things right. Like when he got new glasses, oh, he looked a sight. Then one day he set off, oh, I felt a fool. I mean, who but my lad Herbert would take the wrong ruler to school? And I felt this tap on my shoulder. Says, fancy a crisp then, our dad. And he hands us a square that was more of a crunch. I said, this is no crisp, silly lad. But it did have Smith's name on the packet, and I must say they tasted the tops. I said, Herbert, stop making that racket and get yourself off down the shops. This is definitely getting much better. I believe it's these crisps we should thank. So I've sent the lad off down the high street to buy our goldfish a shiny new tank.
After that, the promotion of Square Crisps became entirely about heavy levels of crunch.
Give me that bag.
Be careful, will you?
We gotta take one each. Okay, now.
Oh, shucks, we ain't broke the safe.
Nope, but you sure done broke the bank. Get 'em, boys.
When it comes to the crunch, eat a Smith Square Crisp.
I'm not done with Lenny Henry yet, though. As a child in the 80s, I associated him with two things. Red Nose Day and crisps. Because almost as soon as he extricated himself from Square Crisps, he became the animated frontman from Quavers, then also made by Smiths.
Colin! Tidy that room!
This calls for a quaver. Watch out, they taste curly.
For the uninitiated, Quavers are deep-fried curls of potato starch in vague imitation of prawn crackers, almost exclusively cheese-flavoured. Initially, you could also get smoky bacon, then in the 80s, prawn cocktail and briefly salt and vinegar flavours were introduced, although they didn't last more than a few years.
Now, Colin, we'd like you to tell us what flavours these new Quavers are.
Bacon flavour, give me another.
Good, good.
Prawn cocktail flavour, I love it, give me another.
No.
Oops.
Quavers, watch out, they taste curly.
And the expansion was almost certainly due to the popularity of the Lenworth-voiced front being Colin Curley, who belonged to that great tradition of animated snack food mascots who suffer from a terrifying psychological fixation on their products.
smells like Quavers. Salt and vinegar flavour. Quaver-tastic. Ooh, Quavers, lovely Quavers. Yum, yum. I can't wait. I've got to have a Quaver.
New salt and vinegar flavour.
Hard as it might be to believe, Colin was very popular among British kiddywinks in the late 80s and early 90s. I know because I was one. Alright, he wasn't an outright childhood hero or anything, but he was certainly a noisy fixture in the gen pop of the prison that was the collective unconscious at the time. The lovely design and animation, which came from Bob Lorry, probably had a lot to do with it. Or Tex Avery by Ralph Bakshi.
Boy, oh boy, that looks just like a Quaver. Hey, this one smells like a Quaver. I wonder if they taste like Quavers. They are Quavers. Quavers. Watch out, they taste curly.
Colin even got his own video game at one point.
Right now, you can instantly win one of 200 Commodore Amigas with scrummy curly Quavers. Or Pushover, a new computer game starring me and my pal G.I. Ant. There are 10,000 to be won. Details on every packet. Watch out, computers have got curly.
Don't be misled by the advert. Some were given away with the crisps, but it was a real game that was really sold in real shops. I know because, again, I had a copy. Albeit, ironically, a pirated copy that crossly accused me of stealing it, which I didn't. I bought it from a legit shop, before refusing to work before I could even figure out what the game mechanics actually were. The Colin's only in the odd cutscene anyway. Mostly he just stands there. What a pain in the arse. Thanks for nothing, Quavers. You might remember these from a Halloween episode.
Great news, horror bag lovers! My latest spine-chilling invention. I'm calling them bats, after my fiendish friends here. Say hello, fellas. It's the fattiest snack you'll ever see, with a frighteningly flighty flavour. And they said I'd never get it off the ground.
New bats in horror bags. Snacks that go crunch in the night.
It's still the only advert for those I could find. Classic corn pulp action anyway. Bats and bones and fangs and things. Horror was big among kids in the 70s. Until some film came along and made space popular instead. KP, cleverly enough, actually launched Outer Spacers in 1976, a year in advance of Star Wars, getting a good strong grip on the vaguely science fiction corn snack market before it became flooded.
Is this a taste of things to come? KP Outer Spacers have discovered a brand new module shape in tasty hot dog flavor. KP Outer Spacers, crispy corn snacks in your favorite flavors. Onion, chutney, beef burger, and now new hot dog flavor. KP Outer Spacers. They're out of this world.
Thrillingly enough, those 4 flavours that Gary Watson seems unduly optimistic are your favourites all had their own shape to go with it, represented by those Blake 7 models in the advert. Beef burger rockets, pickled onion space stations, a vague sort of cross shape that was supposed to be a starship and came in chutney flavour, and, as highlighted there, tripod space stations in hot dog flavour. All of them basically tasted like MSG with slight variations in vinegar levels. They sold well enough until fatigue set in shortly after The Empire Strikes Back. The response was to ditch the dull space vehicles and buildings in favour of crunchy alien shapes. Sort of. You have to take a lot of this sort of thing on faith. But the freshly named Alien Spacers had something else up their sleeve too. Gallons of food colouring. This was back before we gave a shit about our children's health.
KP alien spacers have come to light. 3 shapes, 3 colors in every bag. Choose from cheese and onion, salt and vinegar, and 4 cocktail flavors. KP alien spacers, crunch in color.
Coming in bright beetle red, theoretically green, or dangerously mood-altering sunset yellow, they really did look genuinely alien. So at least they had that. They also started being advertised with comic strips, proper ones with art by the likes of Frank Langford, which even started to encroach upon the packets themselves. After a couple of years, however, alien spacers were regenerated once more, losing the food colouring, taking on the standard shape of nothing in particular, and becoming Space Raiders. Instead of all that Dan Dare bollocks, the premise was brought right up to date with the titular band of, it says here, Galactic Pirates, led by fearlessly androgynous space outlaw and Sieg Sputnik fan Astra, travelling the spaceways in search of plunder, i.e. salty KP treats apparently. I liked it as a 5-year-old. Pirates are cool. Space pirates are cooler. Unfortunately, although the comic on the back of the packet continued, very little of any great interest happened in it, despite any potential promise the characters might have had. I say characters, it was just Astra really. In fact, I found the premise more intriguing than KP did. They didn't really care, they were just trying to sell some corn snacks here. Anyway, you can still get Space Raiders, theoretically, but Astra is long gone, replaced by some generic Close Encounters alien. At least they still taste of MSG, with slight variations in vinegar levels, I expect. So there you have it, an episode ostensibly about crisps, in which none of the products featured actually technically count as crisps. Makes about as much sense as anything else in 2020. Anyway, hopefully all that starch and sodium has short-circuited your nervous system to the point where you no longer care about anyone or anything. No need to thank me. You've been watching a Bob the Fish production. Thanks! If you haven't found it already, be sure to check out our website at bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds of videos not unlike this one that will make you laugh, think and realise new things or your money back. Which works out great because they're all absolutely free. All of this is possible thanks to the not unique way that Bob the Fish productions are paid for by you, the viewing public, via Patreon. For a donation of as little as £1 a month, not only do you ensure that I still have food and shelter so I can carry on making these programmes, but you could become eligible for a whole host of cool extras. New video essays, special event live streams, all my content a week in advance, and my book on the history of the BBC, Rule the Waves, chapter by chapter as it's written. And some cake, if you go out and buy a cake and eat it while you're watching. And if you don't want to support on a monthly basis, you can make a one-off donation via coffee. It all helps stave off scurvy. bobthefish.org.uk. You make it what it is.